Good evening and welcome to the August 12th meeting of the Civil Service Commission. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Yakubian?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Chair Devine?
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Urigi is absent tonight.
Okay, thank you. What's next, please?
Minutes. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd rather take these minutes one at a time, and I'll announce those members who were in present for each meeting and therefore could vote on that particular minute. For the meeting of January 14, 2015, those who were in present and therefore could vote are Chair Devine, Commissioner Yakubian, and Commissioner Gazarian. So I need a first and a second.
Move to approve.
Second.
Unanimous consent.
And Commissioners Urigi and Manukian are abstained from that item.
I don't want to abstain.
For the meeting of February 25, 2015, those who were in present were Commissioner Yakubian, Commissioner Urigi, Commissioner Manukian, and Commissioner Gazarian.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, and Chair Devine is abstained from that item. For the minutes of April 8, 2015, that will be postponing that item to a future meeting date because we do not have quorum to approve that item. For the meeting of May 13, 2015, those who were present were Commissioner Manukian, Commissioner Yakubian, and Chair Devine.
Move to approve.
Unanimous consent. Second.
Commissioners Gazarian and Urigi are abstained from that item. For the meeting of June 24, 2015, those who were present were Chair Devine, Commissioner Manukian, and Commissioner Gazarian.
Move to approve. Second.
Unanimous consent.
Commissioners Yakubian and Urigi are abstained from that item.
Okay, thank you. What's next, please?
Oral communications.
I have no cards. Does anyone in the audience wish to address the commission? Seeing none, we will go on to the next item.
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a review of our current recruitment workload. As you can see, lots of recruitments going on right now. This report illustrates the type of recruitment, who it's assigned to, filing dates, and then dates of any applicable examinations. This is the report is a bit higher than previous months. Currently, 56 recruitment processes. And that's consistent. In the new fiscal year, there are typically new positions approved or things that have been put forth that we're now allowed to proceed with filling. So if you have questions on this, I'd be happy to answer them. This is a note and file item.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to the next item.
Eligible lists established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this too is a note and file item, and this is a report essentially showing the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. As you can see, there are, looks like 11 lists that have been established by our staff, 7 of them promotional, 4 of them open. As you can see, as is typical, the open recruitments tend to have higher numbers of applications, and ultimately, in that far right-hand column, you see the progression from the applicant pool all the way down to the eligible list after we've gotten through our various testing procedures, written interview panels, and things like that. So, again, this is a note and file item, but if you have questions about any of these exams, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to the next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, fire captain.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the item under consideration is the bulletin for approval for the position of fire captain. This is a position within the Glendale Firefighters Association, and it's a non-management position. However, it is a supervisory position. The fire captain essentially acts as the supervisor or the lead in either an engine company or a truck company at each of our fire stations. This item is brought before you because it is a sworn fire or public safety promotional recruitment process, which under our rules are required to come before the Commission. The specification here is, I was going to say, fully consistent with its approved class specification. However, we do have a very, very small amendment, and this is you have a separate report attached, and it's on page 3 under education training. The second line, it says must have completed I-300, S-215, and S-330, and it's the next one that says S-230. At some point, the course that we're referring to in that changed from a S-230 to S-231. So we added the S-231 into that, and that's then the amendment. But other than that, this bulletin is fully consistent with its class specification, and we recommend your approval of the bulletin for fire captain.
Any questions?
Yes. The position is listed as one that may be required. The person that holds the position ultimately may be required to work a 40-hour or a 56-hour week, depending upon assignment. One, is it ever less than 40 hours a week? Two, is it ever more than 56 hours a week? And three, is it either 40 hours or 56 hours or somewhere in between? It seems to be the difference between 40 and 60 hours or 56 hours is almost a third or 30% more in time. It's one thing to say, here's a salary of an X number of dollar range for 40 hours or 56 hours, which is 30% more work. So let's assume the 56-hour higher hourly allotment is to be taken into account by an applicant or by this body here. Is it ever beyond that? What is the determining factor? Why couldn't we be more specific as to what drives these hours?
Certainly. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gazarian, excellent questions. Essentially, the primary schedule that our firefighters work is the 56-hour per week schedule. And it's not per se that they're working exactly 56 hours a week. It's a schedule that averages out over time at 56 hours a week. They essentially work 24-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. And the way the schedule works, if you look at a monthly calendar, they'll work a 24-hour shift, and then they'll be off. They'll work another 24-hour shift, then they're off, and then they'll work another 24-hour shift, and then they're off for, is it 3 days or 4 days? And then they start that pattern all over again. And that's the traditional, they call it the Kelly schedule in firefighting. It ensures that we have people staffed here around the clock. Mm-hmm. If you look at, again, the hours averaged out over essentially a month, it does end up averaging 56-hour work week. So that's why it's called the 56-hour schedule. That's the standard schedule that they have. A 40-hour schedule would be a fire captain or any fire personnel who would be assigned to an administrative assignment, to where they might be in charge of, like, the training bureau, or our paramedic program has a fire captain in charge of that. And the third one is, what is it? Okay. But there are some administrative assignments, and those are people that basically work a 40-hour week, and they have weekends off and holidays mm-hmm. and things like that. So those are the two. The majority of our sworn fire personnel work that shift. And again, the 56-hour work week, it seems like a lot, and it is, but they do get to sleep during part of that time, assuming they don't get a bunch of calls to where they keep getting interrupted, and that certainly occurs. But it covers their sleep time, and there is some time set aside for, of course, meals and physical fitness and things like that.
Which one are you referring to?
I'm referring
covers
to
their
the
sleep time?
56 hours.
56 hours.
Yes.
As far as the 40-hour work week, I recall earlier in your presentation, you stated that it was a non-management position, yet a supervisory position. So under the 40-hour formula, 40-hour weekly formula, when such a fire captain is assigned, he or she is assigned to an administrative duty, whether it's training, overseeing training and things of that sort, that is still not management?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And if they, and what that means is, if they end up, having to work overtime, or if they might work Monday through Friday, and then we'll be short on a shift that weekend, we'd have the ability to call that person in and work a shift, and they'd get paid overtime under the law, under the Fair Labor Standards Act. But really, to the root of your question, the primary schedule is that 56-hour per work week.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to, tag on to that 1 minute. On the person working 40 hours a week, let's say they're about the $10,000 a month range, would the person working 56 hours a week get paid the same amount then? In other words, the one working 40 hours a week makes the same as the one that's making 56 hours or working 56 hours a week?
Chair Devine, the salary, the base salary is the same. However, there is a administrative assignment pay to work actually work the shorter schedule, the 40-hour schedule, because it's sometimes viewed as a less desirable schedule. You have to come in here, 4 or 5 days a week versus the individuals who have longer periods of time off. It's part of it is what meets the needs of this organization, but typically the administrative assignment is it's good if you want to learn the aspects of management, and someday you want to become a battalion chief and learn how to manage but for the most part, most of the employees do prefer working the shift where they are here, for 24 hours, and they have, the time off. They're able to recuperate, and I don't want to understate this or overstate the sleep component of it. Yes, they do get to sleep on duty, and they do get paid for that. However, due to our staffing and just how busy things are in this town, particularly in the evening hours now, there's a lot of calls in the middle of the night, a lot of interruptions. You may have somebody go to bed at 11, and they may be up 3-4 times a night on calls, and it's very hard to do.
Are we putting them in a 5-star hotel when they're sleeping on the job? They're not really sleeping in their homes, so I'm not
Fire
really
station.
Exactly. I'm not really concerned about that, but the $10,948 monthly, forgive me, Chair, does this ever increase beyond this? As Chair Devine was asking, if you give an administrative assignment, and you just alluded to perhaps an incentive for someone to be in an administrative assignment, is that incentive taken into account and factored into this range, or is it beyond this range?
Beyond the range.
It's beyond the range?
Yes.
Okay, it's above and beyond. All right, okay.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
We have unanimous consent?
Yes.
Okay, next, please.
Job bulletin for approval, police communications operator, lateral transfer.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a bulletin for approval, just like the last one. On the previous item, we dealt with a bulletin that required your approval due to the fact that it's a sworn safety promotional under our rules. The reason this is being brought before you is for a different reason, but under our rules, if we have any type of deviation from the approved job specification, we will bring this to the Commission for your approval. And in this case, what we're doing is made a modification to the minimum requirements for this position. Typically, when we hire police communication operators, and these are the folks who answer 911 calls that involve police-related dispatch. This isn't the Verdugo fire calls. This is in the police department. Typically, we hire people who have no experience in this field and essentially provide them the necessary training on the job. They have a 1-year probationary period, and we typically do the recruitment in that manner. So, and we usually end up with hundreds of applicants and narrow it down between the written exams and practical exams, and ultimately we come to our eligibility list. In this case, we're going to try something different. We believe that we can seek out candidates who have experience in the field already, working for other dispatch centers elsewhere that might want to come over to Glendale. And what we're doing for this specialized bulletin, we're calling it Police Communications Operator / Lateral. And we're restricting it to dispatchers at comparable police departments, comparable agencies that also have a dispatch certificate approved by the California Peace Officer Standards and Training, which is POST. We think that there are some good experienced candidates out there, and for this recruitment, that's more or less what we're trying to seek. If you have questions on this, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Russ Kwan is here as well as Cheryl Davis Moore, who's the supervisor of our dispatch operation over in the police department.
I have one question.
Okay.
Why does the closing date reflect continuous as opposed to a set date?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gazarian, I think that's just a reflection of what, we want to have sufficient time to attract the right candidates and make sure we get out and advertise in the right places to find people. Trying to find somebody in this field, it's not, it may not be easy. You may not have people out there that will see this as soon as it gets up. And typically the 2-week recruitment period that we have when we have a set filing date may not be enough time. This will just give us the opportunity to run the appropriate ads and do the appropriate outreach, websites and such, and give us the necessary time to make sure we have a sufficient candidate pool.
I could understand that a 2-week period may not be sufficient, but in my tenure here thus far, the last almost 4 years now, I've never seen a specification that has a closing date really open. Continuous means arbitrarily. But my concern, I guess, is the following. Let's assume we have 50 people that applied, but we keep it open because it's continuous. At what point would it be unfair to those who have already applied to be considered while we keep it open so that we get that one person that at the outset, based on looking at the application, he or she may appear to be the perfect candidate, thus really leaving a lot of people in limbo for an indeterminate amount of time. For example, if I was to apply for this position, I would look and see, well, this closing date is not even certain. So I'm applying, but who knows when it's going to close? So essentially, I may be deterred from applying even, perhaps. Maybe a 30-day or 45-day, even if it was a 60-day period, some definitive ending date would probably encourage those who would otherwise not apply to apply, if nothing else. That's just my thoughts.
Oh, that's a good point. And there's another reason we do open continuous.
Okay.
I see Russ has approached the podium, so perhaps he'd like to say something.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Russ Kwan, Departmental Human Resources Officer. The reason why I went ahead and I established this recruitment to initially be an open and continuous recruitment is because for the police communications operator lateral recruitment, I don't anticipate having a large applicant pool to begin with. So in the event that we would get, let's say, 15 applications, I would close at the end of that week.
I see.
So
you have a number in mind that you would want to at least have a sampling of different applicants?
Correct. Ideally, I would probably close it once we get at least 10 qualified applicants.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Quick question. Is this the same position that previously we've always had a lot of turnover in?
Sir, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Manoukian, this is a position that has a great deal of turnover, and it's one of those that, as I said earlier, has a 1-year probationary period, which is typically reserved for our sworn safety and our managerial positions. But this is a really difficult position to fill. One would think that taking calls and dispatching would be something that could be learned and acquired, but you really have to have the right skill set to do it. 1 minute, you're sitting there, nothing's going on, and the next minute you could have multiple calls where you're dispatching, police officers out to, life and death situations, and it's extremely stressful. So we have a lot of people fail probation, and there typically is turnover, and it's not unique to Glendale.
And the other question was, at the beginning of your description, you indicated this was not from the Verdugo Dispatch Center.
Right.
Now, my understanding of the 911 calls, when they're made, how does it determine if it's a police call and go? That's the part I don't understand.
Oh, certainly, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially when you call 911, as I understand it, the call goes to the police department first. And they ask, is this a medical emergency or
then it's sent
police
over
emergency?
To
and
dispatch.
if it's medical, fire related, it's in a matter of like less than a second. It gets transferred over to Verdugo.
Okay.
Fire department is responsive.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have unanimous consent.
Yes.
Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Principal Libraries, Arts and Culture Administrator.
Mr. Doyle?
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a class specification for approval. This is not a bulletin. The previous two items were bulletins that we're actually posting upon your approval. This is a specification which really sets forth the job duties and minimum requirements and the essential functions for a what amounts to a new position that's been established, or a new classification. This position is somewhat unique, and it's a function that we're trying to achieve some greater alignment and synergy between our economic development function and our library, arts, and culture department. And essentially, this position will be doing a lot of outreach, marketing, and community outreach, working out of the library. As you know, the library is undergoing a major renovation right now, and part of the objective of the renovation is to better incorporate the library into the downtown area. The entrance is changing, and it's going to be more in keeping with the things that are occurring downtown, both at the Americana, the Galleria, Brand Boulevard, and a lot of the nightlife that's occurring there. And this position will be brought into that, and really doing a little bit of economic development, but a lot of the same things in conjunction with our library, arts, and culture department. It's very unique, and I'm trying to. Not sure I'm the best person to explain what's to be achieved by that. Cindy Cleary, who's our library, arts, and culture director, is here if you have questions or you would like some further clarification on the role this position would play.
I just want to know where in this grid is this new position?
Right here.
It's right next to it.
It's the far right.
This lower one? Okay. And is this when you said this is a bulletin?
This is a specification. So
A specification?
Yes.
Who can apply for this position?
Ultimately, and what we'll probably do is either fill this via transfer or a promotional recruitment process.
Okay.
We are the economic development function, which currently resides within the city manager's office, is essentially reallocating this position over toward the library, arts, and culture department. So, is it transfer? Cindy, why don't you come up? This is Cindy Cleary, our Director of Library, Arts, and Culture.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So, I'm sorry, what was the question?
I'm trying to figure out who gets to apply for this position. I mean, is it from within, from outside, or both?
We do think that there are enough qualified candidates within the city that it would be a promotional opportunity, or as Mr. Doyle said, a lateral opportunity.
All right, that's all I wanted to know.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have unanimous consent on that. Next item, please.
Report on revised employee performance evaluations.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a note and file item, but we did want to share with you a project we've been working on. It's something we wanted to do for a long time, but we've worked on it over the past few months, and this is a revision to our performance evaluation process. And the Commission is keenly aware of the importance of performance evaluations. I mean, from the standpoint that you typically once a month you get a report on those that are late in serving, and it sort of keeps us on top of these and making sure that all of our managers do complete them in a timely manner. Additionally, those of you, and I think you've all served on disciplinary hearings, you all know the importance of making sure that evaluations are done properly and that accurately reflect an employee's job performance. And typically, they come into play when we do have disciplinary cases. So my assumption is that the Commission has all seen and are familiar, at least familiar with the existing performance evaluation system we have. I will say, that process has served us very well over the years. However, we felt it needed improvement, and what we have done is revise the evaluation system, and I don't want to say shortened it, but certainly, because that was not the objective, but we did make it a more concise and targeted instrument that really will focus in on really just some key dimensions of the job. And the main objective was to make sure that the goals and objectives that each department has are accurately reflected in the evaluation, so that when it's served to the employees, that they have an understanding of what me as a department head, or all the various department heads are trying to achieve in their goals and missions throughout their departments. The way we went about this was, instead of this just being a project for the Human Resources Department, we put together a task force, and the city manager likes to call them the Glendale Innovation Teams, the GIT teams, and he's had a couple of them since he's been here. But this is Glendale Innovation Team number 4 was assembled, people representing various departments throughout the city, and their task was to look at improving this instrument and making it again more meaningful and effective for our employees. As I said earlier, it's I think an improvement over what we have. It eliminated a lot of redundancies and really, I think, focuses a little more directly on the different goals and objectives that we're trying to seek. And in putting this tool together, we had each member of that task force actually give it a test run and use it on an employee within their department. And we've found that it's going to be working fairly well from that standpoint. And still open to some minor tweaks and adjustments, but because this is an important process and something that, again, has always been of great interest to the Commission, we thought we would have you look at it and see if you have any questions, concerns, or any further recommendations. There's actually 2 of them here. The first is the general one that we're going to be using throughout the organization, and the first couple of pages of that go through the particular dimensions and talk about what those particular dimensions are, and gives the person reading it examples of what it means to successfully meet the standard for that particular dimension, or someone who does not meet the standard for that dimension, or at the highest level, somebody who meets that dimension in an exemplary fashion. And we actually have bullets and very specific objective criteria for reaching that. That's the first couple of pages, and then when you get into the instrument itself, which actually ends up being just 2 pages, the person completing the evaluation would mark off the appropriate box, whether it's successfully meets, exemplary, or or does not meet that particular dimension. They check the box, and then on the second, the applicable box, and then the second page have the opportunity to provide some narrative discussing the strategic goals of that department, and then personal goals, areas for that employee to work on over the next a year or evaluation period, and then an area for particular performance highlights or developmental needs. So again, much more focused, much more streamlined. That's the main thing that came out of this task force. The second part of this, just for full disclosure, we have the fire department has its own specific evaluation process, and that was done separate and apart from the GIT4 task force. And the fire department had some specific needs that they wanted to see addressed, and that's a lot similar to what we currently had, except again more streamlined and more focused. So again, these are items for you to look at. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. I do want to recognize one of the two remaining people in the audience here, Manya Hunanian from my staff, who oversaw this project and did just an outstanding job putting it together and convening that task force of people. It's sometimes a lot easier if you have a project to do to just sit down and do it on your own. But the fact that we assembled, it was a dozen people from various departments to work together, and she was able to officiate a lot of Type A personalities in getting this done, and I want to commend her for that. And if you have specific questions, I'm sure she wouldn't mind answering them as well. So, Mr. Chair, if you have questions, concerns,
may I have Ms. Hunanian come forward? Hello, Ms. Hunanian.
Good afternoon.
In looking at what seems to be a lot of work, I'm a bit confused. When I look at page 35 of our packet for this evening, I see 3 columns. One to the far left, successfully meets; the middle one, examples of exemplary; and the third one, examples of does not meet / improvement needed. The third one, the one that does not meet an improvement needed, reads, to me at least, much like very unsatisfactory, ready to be let go, and should be let go. Because when I look at each item, starting from the top, attendance and punctuality, I look at the examples of does not meet, improvement needed, demonstrates a pattern of disregard for assigned work, scheduled by arriving late. When I look at productivity, the next column, I look at the far right, what doesn't meet and what calls for improvement. Assignments are often not completed. I don't even want to read the rest. Job knowledge and application shows a basic lack of understanding.
This must be Russ's.
Interpersonal skills and teamwork shows little or no interest in group efforts. I'll go to second page. I won't go to the rest of the first page. The second page, leadership and supervision. That's more than middle, halfway down the page to the left. Leadership and supervision. Examples of what doesn't meet that and what calls for improvement states does not effectively deal with disputes or problems, fails to provide constructive performance feedback, fails to provide effective leadership, fails to mentor his or her employees in preparation of succession planning.
This must be Russ's review.
So I want to preface it by saying, look, it seems like a lot of tedious work has gone into this, a lot of thought has gone into this, and I am always for someone to be given a second and third chances. But the description, at least those that I've pointed out to you right now, read a lot like this person is not cutting it, and no amount of improvement. Well, perhaps a great deal of improvement is needed, but at what cost? And is it at a disadvantage to the city or the department that the person is serving in? When I go further into the handout of this evening's meeting, I am drawn to the page 39 where it says performance standards, and there I am encouraged to see that we actually have 5 different standards, at least under safety procedures I'm looking at, and then initiative, acceptance of supervision, management, follow-through. All of these seem to have outstanding, exceeds standards, meets standards, below standards, and unsatisfactory. It seems to me that the below standards and unsatisfactory in the previous pages that I've discussed seem to be lumped together. And there is a distinction, I'm sure you'd agree, between a below standards and one which is clearly unsatisfactory. Below standards is, in a way, unsatisfactory, but unsatisfactory is beyond just being below standards. So those are my initial observations, and I would urge you to take them to heart. And I thank you again for a lot of work that has gone into this. Thank you.
Do you want me to address?
Yeah.
I'll try to address, Mr.
Sure.
Chair, members of the commission.
If there's a basis for me to think otherwise, I'm happy to hear it.
We did try to simplify the document as much as possible, and maybe, in your mind, we've simplified it too much, but at the same time, we did want to provide the guidelines for either successfully meeting the performance standards, the exemplary, and then not meeting the standards of your position. But what we essentially on the ones that you pointed out, when somebody receives an evaluation, most of the time, those individuals who receive a does not meet or improvement is needed, those individuals tend to be on probation. And so when they're provided with their evaluations, they're provided, if it's a 6-month probation period, then they're provided an evaluation at 3 months and then one again at 6 months. And if it's a 1-year probation, then one at 6 months and one at the 1-year mark. So when this is going to be provided with all of this showing that, hey, you're not cutting it, then they're probably going to be failing the probation for that position that they hold. Now, individuals who've already passed probation, you're telling them this is why you're not meeting the standards at this point in time in your position, and you're going to be providing the examples on that last page where the performance highlights and development needs are indicated. And disregard the length of the box itself, because they're going to have an opportunity to provide an addendum or attachment, right. Correct. So they will be providing examples, but we want to be as clear as possible. This is why you're not meeting the standards, and here's your one-time opportunity to go and correct it. And if you don't correct it, then at the 6-month mark, if you're a management employee, or the 90-day mark when the respective MOUs basically allow for the reevaluation period to take effect, you're going to be told, hey, have you improved or have you not? And if you haven't, then at least this creates that documentation necessary for why you're not meeting those performance standards, and then ultimately take the appropriate action, i.e. discipline. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's where we're going with this document.
That sheds further light to my concern. I'm not sure it does answer my question, and I'm not sure that my question calls for an answer from you at this moment. Okay. I'm simply suggesting that it's worth giving it yet one last look, perhaps, with those concerns Absolutely. That I've expressed.
And that's why we want to present this for you, even though there's no action required with this item. We do want to incorporate your feedback. So I will definitely take this feedback back to the team. This is why this evaluation is a draft. It's not the final version. Right. It's simply a draft, and this is the opportunity to take your feedback, go back to the team, and incorporate it. We also receive feedback from the management team. I'm still working on scheduling another meeting with the team so we can go back and incorporate the feedback that was received. So it's duly noted, and we will definitely consider that.
One last thing. There's a couple of items on the exemplary columns that are left blank. Now, if they are left blank because it's a no-brainer, what constitutes exemplary, fine.
Well, they were left blank. For example, the attendance and punctuality, we determined that we don't need 3 different ratings on that. So you're
Okay.
either successfully meeting it or you're
Okay.
not.
Okay. Very well, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, it's an open file, so
Thank
thank
you.
you very
Thank
much,
you.
Bonnie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And the next item, please.
Civil Service Commission, staff comments.
Any comments? Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, really quickly, just want to introduce a new individual up here. This is Ani Navarro. She's new with our department. She's a human resources technician. She'll be working with Angela on next few meetings, but ultimately playing a bigger role interacting with the commission. So she's a very good employee. She's been with us a few weeks now. She's been with the city for a couple of years, working in our IT department. And we were able to convince her to come work for HR. So we're very pleased to have her, and you'll be doing a lot of work with her in the next few months.
Welcome aboard.
Board, we look forward to working with you. Appreciate your coming over. Any other comments? Seeing none,
To adjourn.
we have a motion.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.